The Chinese Communist Party faces riots and unrest as the economy sputters and fails. Is a collapse imminent? Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. So for years, we've been told China is an economic powerhouse, the second largest economy in the world, poised to surpass the US. But now, there are serious warning signs China's economy is sputtering to collapse. It began with zero COVID. For 3 years, China's Communist Party basically shut down the economy by locking down entire cities. Everyone knew it couldn't last. And there were some wild predictions about how China's economy would come roaring back once the zero COVID policies were lifted. And initially, it seemed like that was happening. In a country of 1.4 billion people, millions went flocking back to restaurants, shopping malls, movie theaters, taking vacations. But all that has come crashing down. And even the Communist Party itself is admitting there's trouble. So here are 6 signs that China's economy is weaker than you think. Number 6. At the beginning of June, China's National Bureau of Statistics dumped a bunch of new economic numbers, and they weren't good. I won't go into all the numbers because, frankly, listening to a bunch of numbers is boring. I don't care what you say, Elmo. But let's look at the GDP numbers. A survey of analysts by AFP predicted a 7.1% growth. Turned out, it was only 6.3%. And it's probably actually much worse. It's a well-known fact that China flat out lies about its GDP. Even a top official got caught saying that. So if the Communist Party is saying that it's bad, then you know it's catastrophic. Even Wall Street, China's biggest cheerleader, is getting cagey. JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Citigroup all lowered their forecast for China's GDP in 2023. And that's just the beginning of China's economic woes. There's a revolution brewing. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. China is potentially facing a recession. Here's sign number 5 that China's economy is weaker than you think. China's youth unemployment keeps going up. It's currently sitting at 21.3%. By comparison, it's 8.1% in the US. That's about 1 in 5 young people. A bunch of unemployed, angry young men is not a good thing. And like GDP, the real numbers are probably much worse. China fudges those numbers by counting you as employed if you work just 1 hour a week. Here's another problem. Many Chinese universities won't give students graduation certificates unless they can prove they're employed. So obviously, many Chinese students fake employment documents to get their diploma, meaning there's probably a lot more unemployed. And this is creating another problem, an economic death spiral. That's number 4. So people can't find jobs. That means obviously that they don't spend as much. And according to ratings agency Moody, low demand means companies are hesitating to hire. And you get a negative feedback loop, which is made worse by fears of deflation. Now, at first it might seem like a good thing. If prices go down, people will be able to buy more, especially if they need to save money since they can't find jobs. Well, the problem is, instead of spending, consumers postpone purchases in the hope of lower prices, which also means low demand, which means companies hire less. Not only that, but they cut back production, and then they have to cut prices to clear unsold inventory, which means people postpone purchases in the hope of lower prices. Economist Larry Hu says such a self-fulfilled downward spiral bears some resemblance to Japan's lost decades. Japan also once seemed like an unstoppable economic powerhouse, until it was hit with a decades-long recession. That could be China's future. And some economists argue that China is already facing what's called a balance sheet recession. That's where businesses and households shift more of their income towards paying down debt instead of consuming and investing. Which means people spend less, businesses hire less, and I think you get the picture. But believe me, it gets worse. Number 3. For years, real estate was seen as the safest investment for China's middle class. That didn't turn out so well. Sales of new homes are plunging. And it's really not surprising people have lost faith in the real estate sector. China's real estate is a disaster. Companies racked up debt by selling houses that never got finished. It reached a boiling point where people refused to pay mortgages for houses that never got built. If you want to know more about that, I'll leave a link to an episode about that protest below. But get this, the property sector makes up about 30% of China's GDP. If this collapses, that would be devastating for the entire Chinese economy. The Chinese government is trying to prevent this, but according to Nomura Bank analysts, these measures are insufficient to save the sector. And a lot of that is because people are already worried about deflation and employment. And we're back to the death cycle. Number 2, China's economy is largely built on being the factory of the world. And for decades, that made China rich. But it also means China's economy moves with the global economy. And everywhere is facing the threat of recession and inflation, particularly the United States. That means China is selling less. Exports and imports are down. And that's only going to get worse as the US and other countries continue to talk about de-risking and decoupling from the Chinese economy. This is where communism's inherent authoritarianism really comes back to bite it. The CCP's unrelenting control of all aspects of Chinese society, plus a new wave of crackdowns on foreign firms, is deterring global business and undermining China's own interests. The CCP would have to give up control in order to fix things, and that's something the party will never do. And foreign businesses are finally getting it. Foreign direct investment in China last year, even with zero COVID, was about $100 billion in the first quarter. Now it's just $20 billion. It's gotten so bad that economists at Goldman Sachs are predicting the money coming into China will cancel out money leaving China, which is huge. For the past 40 years, more money has come into China than left. Now it's equal. And then there's the legacy of COVID. And that's number 1. There was one part of China's economy that thrived under zero COVID, the COVID economy. Local governments racked up huge debt buying PPE, setting up daily testing centers, building quarantine facilities. Right now, it's estimated local governments are holding $23 trillion of debt. But here's another explanation for why China's economy is doing so poorly. We have no idea how many people died from COVID. Official numbers were transparently false. For a long time, they said no one was dying from COVID. But we do have some numbers to look at. And no, you aren't going to love them, Elmo. In July, Zhejiang province released some pretty disturbing cremation statistics. In the first quarter of this year, cremations were up 73% compared to the past 2 years. After that caught a lot of people's attention, Zhejiang authorities scrubbed the data from the internet. It's not just them, though. The central and local governments have been excluding cremation data since the fourth quarter of 2022, when zero COVID ended. Is this why there's insufficient demand? Because too many people are dead? If the economy continues to spiral downwards, protests and unrest will spread, especially thanks to all the unemployed young men. The Communist Party will lose its grip and collapse. And then the Communist Party might get added to the COVID death toll. China Uncensored would not exist without support from viewers like you. Most of our budget comes from fan support on the crowdfunding website Patreon. That's patreon.com/China Uncensored. If you support the show with even as little as $1 an episode, you'll get a bunch of cool perks, including the chance to have me answer your questions on the show. And today's question comes from David Michael White. The new intro is too short. What's that about, Chris? Good question, David. A lot of people have been asking me about that, actually. So we've been working hard to figure out how YouTube's ever-changing algorithm works. We've been getting some special training from experts in the field, and one thing they said was that the engagement in the first 30 seconds of an episode is crucial. But our longer intro could be hurting us with viewer retention and possibly dragging down the show, since it lasted about 30 seconds. So we created a shorter version so we can get more quickly into the meat of the story. I can understand if you missed the old intro, I kind of liked it myself, but we're doing our best to play YouTube's game so we can reach more people. And now you know the answer. Thanks for your question and all your support you've given over the years, David. Thank you for watching. If you can, please support us at patreon.com/China Uncensored. Even $1 an episode really is the difference between keeping China Uncensored going and having to shut down. And we know the CCP would love that. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.